What Remains of Edith Finch is a first-person exploration game. The player explores the Finch house and surrounding wilderness through a linear series of rooms, footpaths, and secret crawl spaces. Players are guided through the house by an expository voice narration from Edith Finch.
I lived here until I was 11, but I wasn't allowed inside half the rooms.
Her words visually displayed to the player as part of the scene to direct the player's attention. Through the house, they encounter a series of memorials to deceased relatives. Players make progress by interacting with these shrines and experience flashbacks of relatives' deaths. Each flashback varies in gameplay genre and visual style.
And suddenly, I was an owl. First, all I heard was the wind.
Story. The player character takes a ferry to Orcas Islands off the coast of Washington State, carrying the journal of Edith Finch. Through the journal, Edith recounts her last visit to her family's home on the large island in 2017. The player witnesses Edith's return from her point of view with separate vignettes when she writes about each deceased relative. Edith explains that her family is believed to be cursed. All but one child of each generation die, leaving a sole child to continue the family. Her great-great-grandfather, Odin, after losing his wife and their newborn child, tries to escape the curse by moving from Norway to the United States with his remaining daughter, Edie, and her family in 1937. Odin insists on bringing their family home with them, but waves capsize the house and Odin drowns just off the shore. The remaining family build a new home on the Orcas. Here, Edie gives birth to more children and builds a family graveyard nearby. For a while, Edie believes they have avoided the curse, but unusual tragedies befall her husband Sven and all her children, Molly, Calvin, Walter and Barbara, save for Sam. Edie memorializes each of them by turning their bedrooms into shrines. Sam marries and has 3 children. Edie refuses to repurpose the bedrooms in the Finch home, and instead they construct additional stories atop the home for Sam and his children Dawn, Gus and Gregory. Dawn is the only one to live to adulthood. She moves to India, marries Sanjay Kumar, and has 3 children of her own, Lewis, Milton and Edith Jr. Following Sanjay's death in 2002, Dawn brings her family back to the Finch home. Milton, an aspiring artist, goes missing and Dawn becomes paranoid. Dawn seals off the memorial bedrooms, not wanting the other children learning of their family's past. True, Edie insists they leave a peephole in each door. Lewis commits suicide in 2010. On the day of his funeral, Dawn decides that the remaining Finches must leave the home. 1 week after the eldest son's funeral, Dawn and Edith leave the Finch house one night suddenly, leaving many of their possessions behind.
I never saw Great-Grandma Edie again.
When nursing home employees engaged by Dawn arrive the next day to pick up Edie, she is gone. 6 years later, Dawn succumbs to an undisclosed illness. She leaves the 17-year-old Edith a key to the Finch home, leading Edith to return and explore the house while writing her journal. Edith discovers the key unlocks secret passages between the sealed-off bedrooms. She writes her own thoughts and eulogies on the departed family in her journal. Edith eventually reaches her own bedroom and writes to the unborn child she carries, hoping her journal will help them understand their family's lineage. At the game's ending, the player character is revealed to be Edith's son, Christopher, who disembarks from the ferry, travels to the Finch home and places flowers at the gravestone of his mother, who is revealed to have died during childbirth in 2017. Now, this game was very, very short, but one or two experiences that I found were absolutely breathtaking was baby Gregory's bathtub scene. Initially, it's a kind of playful expletive on just kind of, a happy child having a bath, and through his point of view, you see how imaginative the world is and what it succumbs to. But from his parents' perspective, it's a neglected child drowning in a bathtub.
Hold on, sweetie.
Which is just awful. But this game plays on both those perspectives nicely, as in that
Sam, I told you I don't want to talk right now.
Something that is tragic and horrible can also be seen from a different light as being beautiful, I guess. Like, similar to another perspective would have been my favorite kind of experience in the game was Lewis's last couple of days. As you've seen from Lewis's perspective, he was horribly depressed, working kind of a dead-end job, but in that job he just escaped into his imagination and developed and designed his own parallel dimension in which he was happy and accepted and loved.
I think it pained him to remember Lewis, the cannery worker.
He was dissatisfied with actual life, so he escaped into his own imagination, and through his chapter in this game you get to see what his last remaining lives were. Again, it kind of dances between the tragedy of the reality but also sees kind of beauty in these individual people's kind of perspective in their last remaining moments on the earth. The game kind of highlights the fact that this was possibly a cursed family. I think more so just extremely neglectful and allowed for the majority of stupid mistakes that just ended up in the horrific deaths of so many of children and relatives through just general mishaps, accidents and injuries. Some were just kind of tragedies and some were just general life kind of happenings. But in one gameplay sequence, the player must manipulate Lewis's Finch imaginary fantasy setting on the left side of the screen while continuing to bring fish to the right side into a slicer to decapitate them with a separate set of controls. So this was like the one of the highlights of the entire game, as you're seeing this game develop in Lewis's mind from like 2D into 3D, and eventually his imagination mirrors the reality in which he climbs up to some type of throne and then guillotines himself, which is possibly just himself committing suicide in his real life. It was such a beautiful but tragic kind of scene that you get to see from that perspective, and that in and of itself is kind of the whole point of this game. Like, you're in the concept of Christopher Finch, Edith Jr.'s son. So hopefully throughout the story, Edith is documenting her relatives and hoping to quell this kind of curse, quote unquote, and so Christopher, her unborn child at the time, can have a happy life. I found the game to be absolutely fantastic. It was like a walking simulator with interesting puzzles, different genres. Kind of, as I said at the beginning, like had a multitude of different types of gameplay thrown into it to kind of make the experience more enjoyable. Very short game, extremely short. Probably finished it within 3 hours maybe. But I found the game very enjoyable.
I don't mind if I only have a year left. Or a month. Or a single week. I'd be happier with one more day. I can already imagine the sun on my face.
Yeah, big fan. Anyway, thank you for watching the video. Talk to you later.